Hello, my name is Brandon Gamble, and I am the faculty scholar at the Black Resource Center here at San Diego State University. Looking forward to sharing this presentation with you. So I'm just going to bring forward my screen. And the presentation is entitled Parenting a College Student. So again, this is for entering parents, and I'm your facilitator, Brandon Gamble, or Dr. Brandon Gamble. And I work here at the Black Resource Center, and our effort is to make sure that students have a enriching, enlivening, and experience that provides them with opportunities as well as information that will help them be able to progress and be retained here at San Diego State and ultimately graduate as successful alumni from San Diego State. Speaking of that, I am an alum from San Diego State, and in that I've realized I have so many different people who I need to thank. And I'll begin with my grandparents, of course, who made their way to California to make sure that I'm here. The late Dr. Michael Anthony Brown Cheatem, who was a former professor at San Diego State, who wrote a grant in order for me to be able to go to school more than 3 decades ago. The late Dr. Sharon Grant Henry, who was the department chair of counseling and school psychology, and also the late Dr. Valerie Cook Morales, who was also one of the chairs and a professor in the school psychology program, who recruited me to come to San Diego State. Definitely my parents, Art and Carrie Gamble, who are SDSU alum, and then also a good colleague of mine from Cal State University Long Beach, where I worked for 10 years before going to Oakwood University and coming here, and that's Dr. John Hamilton. And he was the EOP director, but now he's an assistant vice president and an SDSU alum. Also want to thank Dr. Bonnie Reddick, who's the immediate past director of the Black Resource Center. Dr. Tanika Duren-Green, the Associate Vice President, Interim Director of the Black Resource Center. Dr. Nisa Mitchell, Senior Associate Vice President for Student Affairs. Dr. J. Luke Wood, Vice President for Student Affairs and Campus Diversity. I want to thank my children and their mother, who taught me a great deal about being a better person. And I want to thank you for joining us and for sending your student to San Diego State University and entrusting us with their education. All right, so let me begin with a quick story, the denied mother syndrome. If you heard Dorothy Norwood, or I think there's also a Shirley Sheezer version, but this is kind of an American legend about a parent who sends their child off to college and the child denies their parent. The older legend begins, or at least the first way I heard it, was that there was a young man who had gone off to college, and around the holiday break, his father came up to visit him. He was just excited to see him. He had grown up on a farm, and his father rode up on a horse and buggy. And this was during the industrial age, and the father gets up there, and the son is dressed up in a suit, getting ready to hop into one of those newfangled cars, and he ignores his father. So that's one version. But in this version, done by Dorothy Norwood, the mother who has cleaned other people's houses and saved all this money has come up to see her daughter, who is now arrayed in fancy clothes and a new hairdo, and she gets off the train, and other families are getting off the train and are hugging each other, and this young woman is denying her mother, acting like she doesn't see her, and her mother will not stand for it, and her mother says, "I know you see me," and the daughter leaves her friends and pulls her mom to a side and said, "Hey, look, you're too ugly, and I can't be around you." And her mother goes into this deep story about how she saved her from a fire and how she was burned, and how even after that she raised her and cared for her and got her to this point in life. Even after the girl's father left, she was still there, hung in there, wanting to take care of her and to make sure that she had everything she needed to do well in college. And all she was asking for was some simple recognition, right? And it would be no good if any child goes away to university and comes back disconnected from who they are. So we'll talk a little bit about how to avoid that, or avoid the denied parent or denied mother syndrome. But I wanted to begin there with kind of that emotional tie, because sending your child to college is a big deal. So the first day of school, right? At least I don't know about you, but I had at least one of my children. I have two children, two daughters who one is in graduate school and the other one is matriculating through college. And that first day of school, man, when I sent them off to preschool, to kindergarten, yeah, it was tough getting them to get into the bus. That first day of college, I definitely did not want to let them go. But indeed, we need to move forward. Yeah, sometimes whether you're new or you're returning to San Diego State, particularly after the shutdown that we had in 2020 through 2021, we're off saying goodbye and doing the long goodbye. I don't know about you, but my family has a phrase called Black people leaving, where we'll take hours just to say goodbye because we really will miss each other. And I think that somewhat is a legacy of overcoming, like, I don't know when I'm going to see my relative again, but let's linger as long as we can. Some Black parents will not miss the homework. I'm just saying, myself, I did not miss doing all that homework, but now we're hoping that our child has all the skills necessary to be able to handle that on their own. So here's some of the things that we'll cover, and we'll get into what college students experience in their transition to college, characteristics of successful college students, what you can do to help support your student, parent transitions, and a few thoughts on avoiding that denied parent syndrome. Now, for me, I don't know where the money goes, but I get excited too, and I'm more than happy to help support my children. I know their mother is the same way. When you ask your mom for money, she says, "Bring me my bag." Right? There's initial excitement at starting college, feeling more like an adult, right? And now you're kind of released from that burden as a parent too. And for the young person, there's a tendency to test new limits and boundaries, a new sense of freedom. Yeah, that excitement is important. But along with that excitement can come stress and anxiety, new academic demands, questioning whether or not they are able to succeed in college. Some people even call that the imposter syndrome. Roommate issues definitely come up, responsibilities from living on their own, and as well financial concerns. And sometimes they're concerns that you have covered, but the child has questions about what's next. Right? Sometimes we realize we relied on our own children, right? And I know for me, my kids have always programmed my phones. I really don't know what I'm going to do. I'm probably going to have to go and visit them away at college to figure out what I'm going to do with any new phone that I get. But my kids have always taken care of my phones. This whole idea that I'm going to have to start cleaning up the house rather than having them do it for the last few years while they were in middle school and high school. Young people can sometimes feel guilt, right? We've been connected. They can feel that one or more parents are dependent on them and that going to college is an act of betrayal or abandonment. And that's a real thing. I'm just going to let that sit there for a moment because that is a real feeling. It isn't always a rational one, but it is nonetheless a strong one. Loneliness, right? Homesickness, psychological loneliness. Even though they may be in a big crowd, they feel like they're the only one, feeling like they don't have anyone to talk to about their fear, and don't want to burden you as parents with their concerns. And sometimes they don't know where to go for advice because they used to come to you, but now they don't want to burden you. So it's difficult for them sometimes to find that balance. So parents, staff, faculty, and students, we all need to work together. And it's all right to continue parent-teacher conferences. Now, there's a whole issue with Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, FERPA. That's extremely important, but it's still okay to have conversations with people who are helping your child matriculate through the university. So here's some things that successful college students do. They have good time management. They can motivate themselves. And indicators of motivation are making strong choices, using and having enough brain effort that's available after whatever issues that have gone on, whether their own making or sometimes, life stressors, and then also being able to persist in spite of barriers, right? Those are 3 indicators of motivation: active choice, mental effort, and persistence. They should also know a variety of study skills and strategies, right? They should be aware of university policies and procedures, and they should seek help. So let's break these down even more. So time management. Studies have shown that time management is a better indicator of college GPA Then SAT scores. So a general rule is 2 to 3 hours of study for every unit. College is a full-time job. 12 units equals approximately 10 hours in class. Give or take, 24 to 36 hours of study. So it's recommended and that you could work no more than 10 to 12 hours a week. So the motivation, we need to know how to motivate themselves, right? And the students need to know how to motivate themselves even when they aren't interested or don't feel like it, right? So they need to set goals in order to stay motivated, need to set clear goals. Study skills. Students are sometimes shocked to find that the study strategies they use in high school don't necessarily work in college. So they need to use more complex and varied learning strategies. And that requires often talking to other people who've passed similar courses that they're taking or the same course. Finally, a strong sense of purpose underneath all this studying, right? And that goes to some of what I was talking about with the denied parent syndrome, and I'll break that down a little bit more, right? University policies and help I think are extremely important. SDSU has strict policies and procedures for things like financial aid, academic advisement, course requirements. You don't want to find out about that at the last minute. You want to be aware of those things earlier than later. The Black Resource Center, EOP, and Student Affairs will help students with policies, but students must be familiar with their own university catalog for their program and their own schedule of classes. Now, seeking help. As faculty and staff, we want to help students, but we often don't know that students need help unless they say it, right? As the old saying, a closed mouth doesn't get fed. Students are often embarrassed or ashamed to seek advice, tutoring, or counseling, but studies show most successful college students are the ones that seek out the most help. So students need to know when, where, and what kind of help they need, and they need to know it is okay that they admit help. So it's good to make out a list of different types of resources. And I know we have those kinds of lists at the Black Resource Center, and you'll be receiving some contacts as parents, but those students need to have those contacts as well. So how do you best support your student? I got a few ideas on that. Be available to talk, listen, and give encouragement. Encourage them to get involved. And they don't have to be too involved, but at least one thing their first year. Not 5, just 1, right? Encourage questions, but not to ask questions, right? And that's encouraged for you to ask your student, but don't ask too many, right? Show interest in their classes, their new friends, or their activities, but avoid pressuring them when they're reluctant to talk. Find a balance. At least one curricular activity leads to better connection to school, combats loneliness, and you're more likely to graduate. By your second semester or your second year, that would be time to start adding on other activities, but that's again time management as we were talking about earlier. So how do you support your student? Again, don't ask them if they're homesick because they already are. That's a given. You write or email even if they don't write back. Call, but not too often. And too often is more than once a day. I would even say for some kids, it's more than once a week. Once a week is a good measure. Every other day, and then start tapering off till you get down to that once a week. But every day, too much. Sorry, but they need to develop that independence. It is a natural process for mammals to become independent of their parents. Just a little science, that's all. Be a good listener and hear the whole story before you comment, right? So even if you are calling, take that time to listen. Finally, don't worry too much, but nonetheless, stay engaged, stay connected. That's extremely important. This last set of ideas about supporting your student, expect change, but not too much. Be understanding of the changes and stress your student may experience, right? And again, that goes back to listening. Trust them. Keep an open mind to their new ideas, experience, and opinions. And finally, be a home base. College can be stressful and overwhelming. Your support and understanding at those times can make the difference. Just even being able to do a load of laundry can mean the world of difference when they're going through quarters or cards that they need to log in and log out. Just helping them with some of those basics is extremely important. Now, parents, this is for you. Consider your transition. You may experience the empty nest syndrome. You may spend more quality time with your partner and friends, right? Be a good idea to join a club or activity you have put off in the past. Learn something new. Take a class or start a new hobby. You need to individuate or separate from your kid too. You need to find your own independence. And that's easier said than done. I've had to go through it myself. But I picked up a new hobby too. So you can do it. I'm just letting you know on the other side. Now, parents know fake friends, right? And as we're wrapping up here, and your mom will notice your fake friends before you do, or sometimes your dad. For our family, it was my grandfather. He could sniff out anybody who was full of it. But you usually have somebody like that in your family, and it's good for them to connect because that may be a big part of it. And we're wrapping up here talking about avoiding the denied parent syndrome. So you want to get to know as much about your child's friends as you can, right? Because sometimes there's going to be some issues, and I call these my 4 F's, right? You'll question whether or not somebody is a real friend, right? As you're going through your first year of college. There likely is some kind of fight, although it may not be actual physical, sometimes it is. It's some type of falling out with somebody or an issue that happened that is significant. Finances in the first year. The student finding their way and making that budget is difficult, but sometimes they're worried about financial aid and other issues. Also, some level of failure. Sometimes young people are running into the difficulty of the classes, and again, talking about their study habits aren't working. So, friend issues, fight, finances, or failure. Now, it's good to get to know those friends again because they may tell you the real story. I have experienced this myself, and I'm so glad I knew because one of my daughters went through some significant issues, and their friends were able to tell us. Encourage their efforts to make long-term decisions as well. Moving on to the next thing. Those long-term decision makings are extremely important because that leads to maybe even making some good decisions by the time you need their help. Learning family history is good for their identity development and dating relationship decisions. Encourage them to develop their story for their first Thanksgiving, no matter how far out there it may seem. But that first Thanksgiving story about how they're doing in college sets kind of a tone for how they connect with the rest of the family and how they accept or deny being a part of the family. Right? Help them establish goals for the next 10 years as well. That means that you're there supporting their efforts to reach those goals, and they stay a part of the family, they stay a part of the community, and they're able to offer something, even if it may seem abstract, like they're an engineer building bridges. But those bridges help the community, help the family, and hopefully even help them stay out of financial difficulties, and they're able to move on and do well in the world. All right, that's some of my thoughts about working with parents and being a parent of a college educated student and doing amazing things. I'm so glad to be at San Diego State and that you've entrusted your child to us. And we look forward to being able to provide them with the ultimate training and information that they need, but more importantly, to partner with you in helping them have a well-rounded education. Thank you so much for joining. And if you'd like to get in contact with me, my email again is bgamble@sdsu.edu, or you can contact us and come by and visit us at the Black Resource Center. We look forward to seeing you. Have a great day.